Buongiorno, ciao, and other cliched and badly pronounced Italian greetings. Welcome, as always, to our Peloton subscribers and Aerogram listeners to the La Course on Tête podcast. I'm OJ Borg. Alongside me on this edition, Jeremy Whittle, Guardian cycling correspondent, author of such bodice rippers as Bad Blood and Von 2. And they are bodice rippers, aren't they, Jeremy?
Well, I'd like to think so, but maybe I was reading a different book to you.
No, man, I loved it. I was so aroused. Also with us, a cycling journalist for all seasons, Peter Cossins. Hello, Peter.
Hello there, OJ.
I think last time I saw you in the flesh, wasn't it during us filming our attempt at climbing Alpe d'Huez?
It might well have been. I think we've done something. I think the last time I saw you was outside the Stade Vellet, or whatever the Marseille stadium is in Marseille after the time trial at the 2017 Tour, in the car park outside.
Oh, we have to stop meeting in these places, Peter. When we did Alpe d'Huez, you got very close to Pantani's time, didn't you?
I did get close to his time, but I was like 8 bends down from the top when I achieved it. Yeah.
Now, just to let you know, we are recording this podcast post stage 9. I mean, the only thing that seemingly moves faster than the cycling world is American politics. So who knows what will have changed by the time you listen to this, but you have to put a flag in the sand somewhere. So that's when we're recording this post stage 9 of the Giro on a Sunday evening. What we're going to talk about? Well, we'll talk Giro, of course. We'll talk Super Sunday. We'll talk Italian beef after the last podcast. Will anybody do any heavy tipping of who's going to win the Giro? Anybody? Peter, Jeremy?
Yeah, I'm still going to say Vincenzo Nibali.
Oh, okay. Should I still say Geraint Thomas is going to win the Giro, because that's what I said last time?
I've got absolutely no clue who's going to win the Giro. I mean, nobody seems to want to win it at the moment.
No. We have got some breaking news, which we'll get to in a second. But first, let's head over to the Leather Club Chair and William Fotheringham with the latest news.
Welcome back to my rapid review of the week. We've seen one bombshell newsline after another recently, so let's start with potentially one of the biggest. Could today's Gent-Wevelgem have been Mark Cavendish's last race after 15 years as a pro, at the end of the most stellar sprinting career the sport has ever seen? Today, Cavendish spent most of the race in the break and hinted to an interviewer from Belgian TV channel Sportza afterwards that he might be about to quit. Digest that potentially immense news, and the rest of the week probably seems a bit anticlimactic. Sticking with the classics, once Cavendish and company had been brought back to order, the men's Gent-Wevelgem saw a mighty battle hinged on Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel, with drama all over the place and an eventual win for last year's world champion Mads Pedersen. The women's race had a dramatic finale as well, with victory for home rider Jolien D'Hoore, just reward after 2 runners-up spots in 2017 and 2018. As for Brabant's Pile on Wednesday, normally not the biggest of races, but this year all about redemption after Liège-Bastogne-Liège, with Julian Alaphilippe making no mistake in the sprint after another don't miss a second finale, and Grace Brown staging a strong solo move for the women's win. There's been a bit of racing going on in Italy too. Behind Jair Almeida of Portugal, the GC of the Giro actually hasn't budged much since the epic stage at Mount Etna last Monday, where Geraint Thomas had the crash which put him out of the race with a broken pelvis, and where Simon Yates cracked and saw his GC chances end. The week also saw 3 stage wins from Arnaud Démare. Did I ever say that I think he should have ridden the Tour? And British hearts collectively bumped when Alex Dowsett took Saturday's stage with a glorious solo victory. As a reminder that the whole of cycling is currently skating on thin viral ice, Simon Yates was the first rider to pull out of either the Giro or the Tour after a positive test on Friday. And at Wevelgem, the defending women's champion Kirsten Wild was also withdrawn. Sadly, we won't get to see Paris-Roubaix on wet autumn roads. Super Sunday, suddenly not quite so super. The Queen of the Classics has been postponed again after a big surge in cases in northern France. Fingers crossed that everyone stays healthy for the next 7 days.
Thank you very much to William Fotheringham there. So let's talk Super Sunday. How was it for you all? Jeremy, how was Super Sunday for you?
Oh, God, it was baffling. I had so many screens going and live feeds and updates. I kind of lost track of which races I was watching because we had this mad stage of the Giro through the Abruzzo Mountains in central Italy. We then had the kind of spring classics coming in October with Gent-Wevelgem, the men's and the women's race. And we then had Paris Tours as well, which is the Sprinters Classic, which is kind of one of the last really big French race of the season, especially now that Paris-Roubaix has been cancelled because of COVID-19. So I don't think I missed anything. Pete, did I miss anything there?
I don't think so. No, I think you covered it pretty well. Yeah, it sounds like you saw more than I did actually, because they didn't actually show Gent-Wevelgem in France. So I've seen some of the ladies' race. I've watched Paris Tour, which is a very good race, and watched the stage of the Giro today as well.
I have to say that my Super Sunday, because the sun was shining where I am in the UK, and I had a pass from my wife, and there was no headwind. So I actually saw nothing of Super Sunday. I haven't seen the Giro, haven't seen Gent-Wevelgem, haven't seen Paris Tour, so I saw nothing. I went for a bike ride, and I am now slightly tired and a little confused by life, which in some ways, I guess you would say, isn't that a dereliction of duty? Knackering yourself by smashing 60k out before this. But then, hey, if I can't do a ride before recording a cycling podcast, when can I, Peter? When can I?
Indeed, I'm envious of you doing a ride. Actually, OJ, I'd love to have gone out today, but unfortunately, it's been chucking it down here, which meant I was stuck by the TV and my laptop, which I had going at the same time.
Well, also you're a professional as well, and you watch what you're supposed to as somebody who works in cycling journalism.
Yeah. I was just going to say, it's lucky the two of us were watching the bike racing.
I teased a little bit of a breaking news story. Now, as I say, this has just broken. It's just gone viral. What happens off the back of this, we don't know. But as we're recording this has just been put out there. It was put out by Belgian channel Sportza, and this was post Gent-Wevelgem. They asked Mark Cavendish how his race had gone. This is what happened.
Mark Cavendish, I can see it, and it was a really hard day for you. I see you're getting emotional. How was your day?
That's perhaps the last race of my career now. So I'm a little bit.
Do you really think this is your last race?
Maybe, yeah.
Did you want to show something?
He is really upset there, Jeremy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's all come to a head. He was very active in the race today. In fact, he had a pretty good race. He was in the kind of race long break, obviously riding for his team's interests rather than his own to set up his teammates. And he rode pretty well. He struggled once they got deeper and deeper into the cobbled climbs, and then he dropped off the pace. But compared to where he's been the last year, it looked like not the Cavendish of old, because obviously he wasn't sprinting for the win, but he was in it, and he was more in it than he has been recently. So I don't know. It's all very odd, because Rod Ellingworth was speaking to journalists kind of fairly recently at the Giro. He's at the Giro, obviously, with the team there. And he was saying that, we're still negotiating his contract, and he'll be a rider next season and stuff. But I don't know if all the kind of, the years of struggle, the Epstein Barr recovery, the lack of results, if that's all come home to roost. Certainly a lot of us watching him struggle have felt that, a degree of empathy for him, and like kind of, is it still worth it for him? So whilst I'm surprised the way this has happened, it's almost like they thrust a microphone in his face just when he was thinking, I've had enough. And it all flooded out. It's quite
wasn't really shoved in his face. I mean, he was just sort of sat there. I mean,
no, it was the mixed zone. It was the mixed zone, OJ.
Yeah.
That's what it was. When they come to the finish line, and they can either ride and stop, and they stop with people they want to stop and have a word with. And so he was riding through, presumably on the way to the team bus pretty soon after finish. So he may have been kind of like, it may have been a heat of the moment thing that he'll sleep on in the morning, retract or go back on, or enlarge on, or talk about next year a bit. But for people who kind of still think that he can be a contender, that would have been quite shocking. Yeah.
I mean, it was weird to see him in the break in the first place. I mean, I honestly can't remember ever seeing Mark Cavendish in a break at a race before. I mean, it probably has happened, and I just missed it at some point. But certainly, obviously, when he was in his sprinting pomp, we never saw him in a break. We saw his team kind of flattening every break, or reeling in every break, so that they could set him up for a sprint, which he usually won. So it was kind of unusual to see him out there. And I kind of figured when I saw it that he was trying to make a point about something, or that something was coming. So maybe this is it. Maybe he has got in there thinking, this is my last kind of show of defiance or whatever. And he's thinking, now I'm going to bow out. But obviously, we don't know that at the moment.
I mean, the one point about that, there may be things going on, obviously, that we don't know, which is quite likely to be the case in terms of negotiations. And maybe, in fact, you know, the negotiations are not going in the direction he wants them to, and he's going to make a decision. And the decision may be that that's it, you know, but it just seems such an odd way for him to bow out. And it is quite sad given, you know, given the incredible roll call of achievements over the years and the number of races he's won in all the Grand Tours and the World Championships and all of that kind of stuff, it seems quite a sad way for him to go out.
I think it's the emotion maybe of racing again people like Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel. When you have these young, I don't want to use the word tyro, it's such a newspaper word to use. You know, these young, multi-dimensional sprinters and riders, this whole crop of young racers that are coming through. I know we're going to talk about a little bit later on. Do you think when you've been battered over a race of that distance, that's the emotion? You think, I just can't do this anymore. What's the point? I
think there's an element to that. Yeah, I think there's certainly, for a lot of these guys, I mean, you can see it with riders like Whittle as well, who've been around for years and years, and they're just they're not featuring in the sprints at all anymore. I mean, obviously Cavendish, like Jeremy said, he's had his difficulties with illness. Rod Ellingworth's giving him a chance at Bahrain McLaren, and we've seen him a few times get in a position where he could sprint, and he hasn't got in the mix at all. And it just seems like his time is gone. Whether it's his fitness that's gone, he's lost his motivation. I don't know. We'll find out more in the next few days. But this did just seem like almost like a final fling for him.
I mean, the game has changed, hasn't it, as well? You know, the whole scene has changed to where it was kind of 5 years ago, which is 3, 4, 5 years ago, which is where we remember him. And as you say, Pete, all of these, you know, these young tyros, and I can use that word because I'm a journalist, all these young tyros have come through, and they're frighteningly good, aren't they? I mean, they are really, really good, these kids, and they are burning everybody off their wheel. And we saw again with Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel this afternoon in Gent-Wevelgem. They didn't care about anybody else. They were just marking each other in the last 10K. It was all about them. You know, it wasn't, I mean, they could easily have won that race, I would assume. But in fact, it was Mads Pedersen of Denmark who took advantage of it and snuck in and won. But for Cav, looking at the landscape of the sport, I guess he must know he's not. The last thing is he's stupid. The last thing is stupid, and he would have looked at it and surely have seen that, you know, what future has he got really as a rider now, unless he rode for the team, or he did some kind of, you know, mentoring role. But even that, maybe that isn't going to work anymore for him.
No, I mean, there's no point really. I don't think we should probably discuss it anymore because we don't know. Maybe he's going to retire. I've just checked his socials. Maybe he's going to retire in the morning. Maybe he's not. Maybe we'll see the season through. It seems weird not to see the season through. I think it'd be a shame if he didn't, even if it's just a lap of honour, considering the career he's had. So if we're talking about Gent-Wevelgem, let's talk about that now and some of the classics to come, and then we'll get onto the Giro afterwards. Win for Mads Pedersen. What do we expect from the rest of the classics? Are they all happening? Well,
we don't know, do we? I mean, the worrying precedent is that Paris-Roubaix has been cancelled, which is right in the top corner of northeastern France, very close to the Belgian border. In fact, basically finishes on the Belgian border, and they decided that because of the rates of the virus spread, that even with, you know, minimal spectators, it was unsafe for them to go ahead with the race. Now, I'd point out that I think ASO, who organised both that race and the Tour de France, that they're in a very different situation with a one-day race, which is kind of, you know, shoehorned in on this weird date rather than in April when it's normally held, than they were with the Tour de France, which had the full support of the government in France and the health ministry in France, and was something that everybody in France wanted to happen because of the importance kind of economically and in terms of culture for all of France. So, you know, it's an expendable one-day race, but it sets a precedent. And you're now looking at other races in that part of the world, which is obviously where most of the classics are, and wondering, how will they manage? Flanders is the next really big monument, isn't it, Pete? So we'll have to wait and see, I guess.
We've got Shelter Price coming on Wednesday, which has been wedged in between Gent-Wevelgem today and Flanders next Sunday. And I guess the good thing that we saw today was that the organisers and the riders before Gent-Wevelgem were saying, please don't come out and watch the race, don't come on the climbs, just stand outside your front door, watch the riders go by, then go back in and watch it on TV. And from the bits I saw, that's essentially what people did. Assuming that people can stick to that at shoulder price on Wednesday, I'm guessing that'll probably mean that Flanders will go ahead next weekend. I mean, obviously, a week is a long time in the age of COVID-19, so we don't really know what's going to happen. But at the moment, it looks likely that Flanders will go ahead.
Yeah,
I mean, the riders are all racing day by day, aren't they? And I think that may be one of the things that's kind of inflicting the Giro a bit. There's a sense of a growing uncertainty about whether it will reach Milan, because we're into the second week now, and the race organizer or the director of the Giro, Mark Cavendish, has already indicated that he's anxious about the rising rates in northern Italy specifically, which is where they're heading. We've already lost Simon Yates, who's the most high profile, the only really high profile rider to
the only rider. I think.
The only rider. That's true. I keep saying, to be absolutely clear, the only rider mid race to be pulled because of in a Grand Tour, to be pulled because of a positive test for the virus. So, the signs are increasingly worrying, but one-day races are probably easier than stage races, I would suggest. I guess they're easier to control than stage races.
Well, let's talk about the Giro. It hasn't been the most exciting of races outside of news stories, outside of Geraint Thomas hitting a bottle, outside of Simon Yates with the positive test. It's not been a classic so far, Peter, has it?
No, I mean, it's funny. I was reflecting on this actually before today's stage. When we were at the Tour, I think we were 6 stages in, and being in the press room then, and everybody saying, "Oh, it's pretty dull. Nothing much is happening." Then we had on stage 7 at the Tour, we had the day in the crosswinds, and it all blew apart. And Pogačar, Richie Porte, and Mikel Landa all lost time. Ended up finishing in the top 4 overall, but it was kind of exciting at that point, and we got the weekend in the Pyrenees, but we haven't really reached the equivalent point in the Giro yet. It's just dragging a bit at the moment. We've seen some good individual performances from Filippo Ganna winning 2 stages, from Arnaud Démare, kind of the new king of the sprints. We had a great win today from a young Portuguese kid, Ruben Guerreiro. But apart from that, it's just not caught light at all.
It's interesting because I think the Ruben Guerreiro victory has gone down well with certain other riders in the breakaway. I don't know if you saw the comments, but Larry Warbasse of AG2 Ireland Mondial was quite abrasive and rude about him after the stage, and said he raced like a complete a-hole, which basically was, I think, to the fact that he didn't pull in the break that much, because obviously he wanted to save himself for the sprint, which is why he won the stage. So so this kind of feuding element. I get a slight feeling. I mean, you quite often get this with the Giro as well, but a slight feeling of kind of people getting antsy. And maybe it's the cold weather. Maybe it's, today was particularly grueling, wasn't it? It looked really cold. Well, I know it was really cold because I've spoken to people who were there, and it was rain pretty much most of the stage. And it's going to get worse, the weather, surely, as they head further north, you'd expect.
Should we talk about beef, Italian beef, Jeremy?
Yeah, well, I was just saying that Ruben Guerreiro was called names by Larry Warbasse, who was in the breakaway this afternoon with him as well.
What names? What names did he say? What names? Are we allowed to repeat them here?
A-hole. And then he said Guerreiro was riding like a real asshole today. I guess maybe he was smart because he saved his legs for the sprint. So that's fair comment. I mean, obviously, if the guy's really targeting the win, he's not going to bust his guts in the breakaway if he genuinely thinks he can win the stage, which obviously he did. But then the other thing that's quite interesting is that Nibali, who has history of beef with people, doesn't he? Because he's fallen out with Chris Froome before, a couple of times. Once when Froome stormed onto the bus, I think 2015 Tour, after Nibali threw a bottle at him during a finish in northern France. I think it was in Le Havre in northern France, and they were coming up some climb, and there was a crash, I think, and Nibali threw a bottle at Froome, and then Froome rode through the finish line and went straight to the bus and grabbed Nibali by the lapels, which obviously didn't have lapels on his jersey, but you know what I mean.
Have.
And and held him up against the wall of the bus and kind of, said, "Don't ever do that again, please." And then also Nibali has fallen out with kind of various other organisers, and famously was disqualified from the Vuelta for holding onto a team car for best part of a stage. And there's been other incidents as well, other beef with Simon Yates as well, of course. Last year when Simon Yates was kind of quite pompous, I suppose, really, about his own abilities, and Nibali kind of like immediately rounded on him. But his latest victim is Astana's Jakob Fuglsang, who people will be familiar with as kind of, a real contender for the Giro and past winner of multiple races like the Criterium de Dauphiné and Liège-Bastogne-Liège. And anyway, they were teammates at Astana for quite a few years. And apparently they're not speaking now. And Fuglsang has said in the Danish press this morning, he said that I don't know if he's jealous, ambitious, or what else. I think it's due to the fact that I was his wingman in the past, but now in the last 2 years I've been stronger than him, and he has a hard time swallowing it.
Oh, I mean, I love this sort of thing. For me, I'm all about the drama. I love the high drama. I mean, what's interesting, if you look at where they're both sat in the GC battle for the Giro, they're only, 4 seconds apart? Nibali in 5th, Fuglsang is in 6th. I mean, do you think Nibali's got a chance? He's just a minute outside of the pink jersey that Almeida's wearing. Has he still got a chance?
I think insulting a Sicilian like that may be a mistake on the part of Fuglsang. But anyway, we'll see. But yeah, of course, yeah, absolutely. And I think in a way, Fuglsang should be flattered because maybe Nibali's identifying him as a real, he's such a canny rider. He's probably watching everybody's pedal stroke, how hard they're breathing on the climbs, how they follow the little accelerations. And maybe Fuglsang should be flattered.
We saw in, was it 2016 when Kruijswijk crashed out into a snowbank a couple of 2 or 3 stages from the end with Nibali kind of pressing him over the Agnello Pass, which they'll go over again this year. That Nibali does tend to race in a very canny way. I mean, that year he was getting absolutely caned by the home press for 2.5 weeks. And then suddenly in the last week, the last 4 days, basically, he just came to life. It was almost, he just timed his effort perfectly. And maybe that's what we're going to see again this year. I mean, one other thing I picked up on in that Fuglsang spat was that Fuglsang criticised the fact that when they were riding around Sicily, there was just like litter everywhere and how messy it all was. And you just thought, that's not really something that's going to Vincenzo.
So you insult a Sicilian and then you call Italy messy. Good.
Yes.
Welcome back to the Giro, Mr. Fuglsang.
And then did you say, that's your mum, that is, or something like that, isn't it?
My mum can climb better than your mum.
Yeah. So I think, oh dear. Well, he may. You'd think he'd know, though. I mean, if he'd been teammates with him for 4 years, which included a period when presumably Nibali falls out with people on a regular basis, but that included a period when he was presumably having a spat with somebody else. You'd think that Fuglsang would know not to wind him up, but clearly he couldn't help himself.
Is Nibali a better rider angry? I mean, I've got no idea. I don't know the personal Vincenzo Nibali. Is he better angry?
I think he's very cold, but very, very calculating. And I'm sure he knows as he's getting older that he probably doesn't have quite as much, he doesn't have as much punch in the climbs, as much acceleration as he used to have. But he's just such a great judge of racing, isn't he, Pete? He really assesses a race really, really well. And from watching him race, especially in the one day races that he's won, and things like that Roubaix stage, the stage into Roubaix in the Tour that he won in 2014, and when he's won the Tour of Lombardy as well, he's so astute.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's for me, he's the ultimate tactician. He's, like you say, he's brilliant at judging a race. I mean, we saw that when he won the Giro in 2016, where he kind of realised going up the Agnello that Kruijswijk was struggling a little bit, and then just decided to push on the descent and effectively won the race at that point, even though Chavez ended that day ahead of him. I mean, Chavez couldn't compete with him on the last day in the mountains. And I think he's just got this ability to read people, to know to get under their skin a little bit, to to unsettle them, and that's probably all it is for him. He's just kind of chivying away at them. He can do it on the road, obviously to a big extent, but he can do it all the time like this, and with the Italian press, media helping him as well. It'll all be building up. He'll probably be loving all this.
It's a great storyline.
Yeah,
it's such a good storyline, I think, for this Giro, especially one, as we've said, hasn't been one of the classics. One thing I think we should probably talk about is the fact that, as with the TDF, the Tour de France, younger talent seems to be coming through. Now, obviously, I know who Hagen's Berman prodigies are. I mean, of course I know that. For people maybe who don't, Peter, what is Hagen Berman's? Who are the prodigies?
Well, it's a team that's under 23 team that's run by Axel Merckx, an American team, and they've seen. Well, I mean, today we had Ruben Guerrero winning the stage, so he's a graduate of the team. We had Theo Gegenhardt, who gained some time on the GC riders at the finish today. He's another graduate of the team, and there are just dozens and dozens of riders that they've produced over the years who've come through that team, and I mean. They've always produced riders with huge potential.
And Almeida, of course, who's leading the Giro.
Almeida was the other one I was trying to think of. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a whole list of other riders who are now filtered through into major teams, and they've all really got the ability to succeed, or they all seem to have the ability to succeed at world tour level, and it's become a not a train of talent, but it's become a bit of a production line, hasn't it?
A bus maybe, if not a train, a multi-carriage train. How about a bus?
Yeah, well, maybe, but I think the other thing is too is that these kids don't. I keep saying they're kids. I mean, they're in their mid-20s, most of them, but they don't have any fear, and they don't have any fear of reputations as well. So they won't be, if Nibali starts, sledging them, they'll just kind of. Yeah, they'll just laugh.
Sure.
Whereas I think it's easier for Nibali to get at people of his generation than it is to get at these kids who are riding their first or second Grand Tours and don't necessarily have the same kind of attitude that he has.
Yeah. Well, do you think the craziness of this season, Peter, maybe is playing into how well the young riders are doing? Because in some ways they're new to the World Tour. Yeah,
I mean, I think that they're more adaptable. I mean. We've seen that. I mean, a lot of riders and team managers have been saying that. I mean, look at someone like Geraint Thomas, who was obviously there was a big debate about his selection for the Tour, and given his form at the Dauphiné and races leading up to the Tour, he didn't deserve to be selected. He wasn't going to do anything to help Ineos very much. Whereas we've seen younger riders. I mean, Pogacar's the most obvious example, but I mean, we've seen Wout van Aert. We've now seen Almeida at the Giro. Who are adapting brilliantly, and they're completely unfazed by it. Really, it's almost like you say. I think there's something going on with the body clock. And Mikel Landa was talking about this at the Tour. He said it's quite difficult adapting to racing the Tour de France in September, when you're kind of thinking this is when I should be winding down. I should be riding a World Tour. I should be looking ahead to where I'm going on holiday. It's quite a big change for these established riders.
I mean, that's just routine, isn't it? That's just that they well, maybe that's being too glib about it, but that's just the routine of racing that they've all become accustomed to. And as you say, their body clocks and their kind of whole, well, in January I have my training camp, and then I move to February and I do those races in Spain, and then I do go to Oman or wherever it may be. A lot of the stuff that they rely on, that are the kind of signposts towards success, have been ripped away this year because they've lost races like Oman. They obviously the other races in the Middle East were impacted by the virus as well. Then the whole of March and April and May. So yeah, I guess that's a fair point. And when you are in your early 20s, you don't really have that much fear, do you? You don't think about those kind of things that much. You're just pleased to be busy and getting involved in all that stuff.
Pleased to be wearing a kit and riding, I guess. Yeah. Just talking about another one young rider. What about Theo Gegenhardt? He sat 17th on GC's, 241 down for the Ineos Grenadiers. Is he out of it now?
No, I think he's not out of it. I don't know if he can get in the top 3, but he looked definitely that he could get into the top 10. He was strong this afternoon. I think the problem with him is that they need to just make a decision about, is he going to be their protected rider or not? Because at the moment they're looking for stage wins, and on the form he showed in the last half an hour of that stage this afternoon, especially the last K or so, the last once they came into the very steep last part of the climb, he looked strong enough to move further up the GC as well. And if they actually put the team behind him, maybe he can get to the top 10, and then, once you're to the top 10, you can get to the top 5, can't you? If things go right and you don't have mechanicals, you don't have punctures, and you meet the key moments that you need to meet. So I'd have thought that he has a real opportunity here, yeah. And if you remember a couple of seasons ago, he was riding incredibly well in stage races.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you're saying about they are protecting him apparently. Also, Ben Swift was saying after the stage yesterday when he finished, was it yesterday? He finished third in the sprint behind Arnaud Demar. He'd actually been riding in front of Teo all day and keeping him out the wind, and just kind of found himself at the front towards the finish, Ben, and sort of thought, I'll give the sprint a go. But he did say, we are trying to protect Teo. We'd see a GC opportunity. And I think the one thing that stands out for me about this opening few days of the Giro is that somebody could come from a long way back and end up well up in the GC, maybe not winning the race from the distance he's got to make up, but certainly, I mean, you only need one good day at the Giro and you can gain a lot of minutes. And we haven't seen any of the hardest stages yet.
Actually, talking to Teo Guggenhardt, we have actually got an interview with him, don't we, Jeremy?
Yeah, we managed to engineer a catch-up with him through WhatsApp after the stage this afternoon.
You look to be going fairly well today. You took some time off the others, and how do you feel out there today?
Yeah, I think it was a pretty long day, but all day I felt pretty good. Took like almost 2 hours for the breakaway to be established, so just tried to save as much energy as possible, and I knew that the last climb would be pretty selective, even though in the end it was a pretty strong headwind. But yeah, I just tried to obviously use the fact that I'm a little bit off on GC after kind of taking the first TT and stuff easy when we were obviously all here to support G. So just trying to play it day by day, and the most important thing is the legs felt good. So now we've got a rest day tomorrow, and looking forward to that now.
With all the wind and the rain and the cold, did you feel better than the others today, or did you just feel really good today?
No, I definitely felt much better than in the first 4 or 5 days. Was always the plan to come in here quite fresh, because I knew that the majority of my role for Geraint would have been in the second half of the race. I paid for that a little bit in the first few days, but that's fine. You can only work with what you know in those moments before the race. I felt pretty good today, and just focused on the simple stuff like fueling well and dressing well and staying warm. So I'm pretty content with the day's performance. I'm disappointed for Castro and also Salva yesterday, but they're also two of the classiest and most humble and selfless riders in the peloton, so I've no doubt that the good karma will come back their way again in the future.
And even though you're a little back in the GC, you still managed to put 30 seconds into Fuglsang and the really big GC contender. That must give some motivation still, that you managed to put them and keep them behind you.
Yeah, I mean, why not? Wasn't a super finish to be out there with the wind, but in the end that's also sometimes what helps, a little bit of hesitation behind, so you take the wheat with the chaff. Just approaching every day, looking to get stuck in. We got more or less 7 guys trying to go in the break every day, and then I'm just trying to save energy and do the best I can. So we've got a lot of days to come, but I think was missing the victory today, but otherwise was a nice day for the team. So we're looking forward to reset tomorrow, and still a lot of the race to go. I guess we're not halfway yet, really. I personally just want to make the most of this opportunity to be here, healthy, and after all the year we've had, to do the best we can really to represent our sponsors and owners, because they've stood by us all year in what's not been easy, and even all the staff in the team likewise. So we've got just under 2 weeks of the season left, and I really want to have something nice to look back on in November, December, and then look forward to next year and maybe a little bit more regular season if we're lucky.
Teo Guggenhardt there. So you see a possibility for the win, or maybe just for a top three, Jeremy?
I think the win would be extraordinary and remarkable, but I don't know. I mean, I thought they must want to get something out of this, because it's been a pretty they won the 2 stages. I know, rah, but it's not been a great year for them so far. And they're not a team that only wants stage wins. They look for podium placing, and they look for wins as well, for overall wins. So I'd have thought their ambition in a race that looks increasingly unpredictable, and the moment it's quite boring, as Pete said, I think there's not an awful lot going on. But the last week, if they get to that last week, it'll be all over the place, won't it, Pete? It'll be really mad, and there'll be massive changes, I'd have thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think just focusing on Guggenhardt just briefly. I mean, I think the key thing for him, he's got a great opportunity here. I mean, he had a chance at the Vuelta a couple of years ago, and they gave him the chance to lead the team, and it didn't go too well for him. But I mean, this is a really open race. I mean, if he rides in the aggressive way that he did today and takes his opportunities, he's going to end up well up in the top 10. And of course, that's only going to raise his status within the team looking ahead.
A team that's having a great Giro, it seems, is EF, Jeremy.
Yes. Now, we're not really surprised. Well, I mean, we would have been surprised, I suppose, before, because EF are one of those teams that I guess most cycling fans, perhaps they are a bit like Marmite, but most cycling fans do like them because they like their individuality and the fact that they've hired, people who are kind of like into music and art and other interests. So they have this kind of umbrella of being cool, I suppose, and all slightly alternative, despite being quite corporate as well. But they suddenly seem to be pulling off big wins, don't they, Pete? It's like, they're no longer the kind of nearly men who just kind of, they're there and everybody likes them and everybody likes talking to them and so on and so forth. And they've got a manager who's willing to talk about all the big issues cycling faces in Jonathan Vaughters. But they're now actually really, really pulling their weight in the peloton.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting to see the Caicedo win the other day. I mean, I don't think he'd actually won a race, apart from the Ecuadorian National Championship, before he won his stage on stage 5 or 6. I can't remember which one it was. I think a bit like Sunweb, they've been underestimated by people. They've been written off because they don't have a big hitter as a leader. They don't really have a great sprinter. So you kind of look at the team and you think, where are the wins going to come from? But I think one of the great things about EF is they've got very, very canny management. I mean, Charlie Wigalius, Tom Southam, Matty Breschel on the classic side. And I mean, we've seen that to a certain extent with Ineos, haven't we? In terms of they've lost Portal, and that's kind of ripped a big part of their team away from them. And we've seen that also with Sunweb, with Matt Winston and with Luke Roberts, who've been so fundamental to those guys being successful. And we saw it again today. They had Casper Pedersen won Paris Tour, and they had Nieuwenhuis, who finished third in that race as well. As with sport, or whatever sport, as soon as one guy starts winning, all his teammates start looking at him thinking, well, he can win, I can win. And it's just a confidence thing, I think.
I mean, I wonder what the catalyst was, because they've had kind of a series of big wins, I suppose, in the last year or so. They obviously had Bettiol winning Flanders, which, seems like a long time ago, but then maybe that made them believe more in themselves as a classic team. They've then had, a flush of success with Sergio Higuita, obviously, and being very successful in Paris-Nice and winning on the Turini. Then they had on the Col de Turini, which is a legendary climb in the south of France. Then they had Martinez winning at the Dauphiné. And it's kind of snowballed, hasn't it? It's interesting how those seem like relatively small successes, but actually they've built and built and built until they've got much bigger successes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's crucial, though, isn't it? I mean, obviously Guerrero today won his first race ever at the Giro, but I mean, that's exceptional rather than the norm. You need to build up in the way that we've seen, I don't know, like Mark Hershey do that and have that kind of takeoff. And that's what we're seeing most of the time.
But interestingly, he obviously raced really ruthlessly and pissed people off because Larry Warbass is calling him names. And that's interesting because I don't know if that EF were always the kind of team that you'd associate with riding with that kind of mentality as ruthlessly as that, you know. So maybe there's been a cultural shift there. Maybe there's been some kind of recognition that, you know, again, it's that the younger riders, isn't it? It's Higuita, Martinez.
It's the kit.
Guerrero.
It's the kit, Jeremy. It's that kit. The
It's
kit
the kids and the kit.
It's the kids and the kit, which, may I say, I'm still a massive fan of the kit. Although I missed out on it. They did like a limited edition. You have to sign up to the website at a certain time to be able to buy the kit through Rafa. And I overslept to miss the time I was supposed to log on. So I am duck kitless.
OJ, do you want me to phone a friend and see if there's any left?
Yes, I would like you to phone a friend.
Okay.
If I end up wearing that, double XL, mate, double XL.
I don't know if they can run to that.
That's the problem with all the pro kit. It's not built for rugby league forwards like me, and for the American audience, linebacker. Right, let us hear from Jonathan Vaughters, the Vortinator. Jeremy, you sent him a voice note. He sent you what back? You sent him a question. What did you ask him?
Yeah, I was just asking him really about the kids and the development attitude that he had, and whether some teams have been left behind because they kind of, I don't know, stuck to tried and tested riders and tried and tested methodology and tried and tested tactics, and that had been found wanting. When Pete was just talking about the DSs now, the young sports directors, if you look at in the team cars, it's increasingly the younger guys who are bringing the best out of the younger riders as well. And I wonder if there's something to be said about, if you have a DS, it's good if he's recently retired because he will understand the stresses and strains of modern racing perhaps more than somebody who retired 15 years ago. Having said that, of course, the DS behind the Tour de France winner, Tadej Pogačar, was retired many years ago. So
it's a very long question, Jeremy, you asked Jonathan Vaughters. Let's see what he said.
The thing you have to realize is if you look historically in cycling, there have been very few modern, we'll call them Tour de France's, that have been won by a rider or a top level talent that was bought from another team or that was transferred on the transfer market. Most of your multiple winners of the Tour de France, Miguel Indurain, Chris Froome, these guys were on one team almost their entire career, or at least almost the entire time that they were winning the Tour de France. So when we look at youth development, statistically speaking and historically speaking, it's the most effective way to try to win the biggest races. Now, that's not to say that that's the only reason that, our team has moved to looking at younger talent. Because there have been times in this team where we've actually looked at older talent that had been overlooked. But generally speaking, the reason we're looking at sort of older guys and really young guys is that we just don't have the financial resources to buy a proven talent at the top of their career. We have to look for guys that are on their way up and buy them before they're expensive, or look at guys that have had a couple of rough years and are in the later part of their career, but we still feel have a couple good years left in them and can win big races.
The disruptor in chief, I hate using the phrase disruptor. It's very much a marketing word, but that's what they do. That's what EF do. Let's end this conversation of where we're at in the Giro d'Italia by hearing from our man in Italy. William Fotheringham again caught up with Marco Pastanese, a man who spent 25 years as a cycling writer at La Gazzetta dello Sport, as well as being the author of numerous books on Italian cycling.
So welcome back, Marco Pastanese, one of the leading writers in Italy on cycling. Marco was a journalist for Gazzetta dello Sport for 24 years and has written many, many great books on the sport of cycling. Marco, what is your view on the Giro for this week coming up? How do you see the race developing now? Currently, obviously, it's a bit of a stalemate with all the favourites grouped, but behind the young Portuguese rider, João Almeida.
Well, I think it's a very exciting Giro d'Italia. It's very interesting because all the guys are in a minute, in maybe a couple of minutes, and there are so many who can win, who can be the leader, who can get the pink jersey. And so I think that it's I like it. I like it very much. And I think that the people like the Giro d'Italia. There's a great audience, there's a great expectation, and there's a great love with the race. That's what I feel. That's what I feel. And it's just 1 week has gone, and there's a long way to go. And there are so many chances to be caught, no? To be got. And so I think it's a great race. I'm very happy because it's going on very well.
Marco, what do you think the crucial stages will be in the next 7 days? Everyone is talking obviously about the summit finish at Piancavallo on Sunday and about the time trial at Valdobbiadene on the Saturday, I think it is. Do you think anything will happen before we get to those stages?
I think that there's a fear among the riders. They check very closely, you know, they check themselves, and so I don't know what can happen. You know, the day Roccaraso, the Roccaraso stage was perfect for an attack, for a revolution, you know, but nothing happened because they checked themselves, each other, and so that's the way. The Cesenatico stage is great. It's could be very, very important, and obviously Piancavallo because there's a mountain in the final, and obviously the time trial in Prosecco in Valdobbiadene because it's everybody is for himself. But Cesenatico with the race will be in the Nove Colli ways, and so I know and they know very well, and it's possible they can fight, they can struggle. There's a good road, you know, for attacks.
Marco, 1 week ago, we talked about what was going to happen in this bike race, and we talked about Geraint Thomas, we talked about Simon Yates. Neither of them is in the race anymore, and literally Geraint Thomas's race was over within 24 hours of our discussion. The one finish at Etna changed everything on the Giro. What do you think where do you think we will be in 7 days' time from now?
I can't say, obviously. There were two big surprises, you know, with Geraint Thomas and Yates, and so they were the leaders of the race. And then everybody could say Thomas is the favorite, and Yates is the challenger. But now it will be a very open race. Almeida is someone to be discovered because he's very young, but he's very good. And I think all the Fuglsang is a good rider, and he can have chances. And Nibali as well, but Nibali, I don't think is the leader of the race, as the broadcasters, Italian broadcasters, used to say. And Nibali is the leader. Everybody looks at him. I think that it's not so superior. You know, it's not better than the others. So we'll see. It's easy to say we'll see, but it's very, very open, very open.
Marco, obviously we have lost Simon Yates to the COVID-19 virus, and this was a huge shock for the race and for everybody. What is the current feeling about the race? Do people think that there is a risk that the race will stop before it gets maybe even before it gets to the Alps or before it gets to Milan because of the virus?
Well, the risk, the danger is possible, and but the idea of the Italian government is to don't have any lockdown anymore. So if there's something very dangerous, the high rates of the virus, close, some places, but not the country. Now, in these days, the Giro d'Italia is the country mobile, is the country on the road. And I don't think they will stop it. And so the race will go on. And if something so bad will happen, probably they stop the race and the result will be, just what it is in that day. So the general classification of the day when it will be stopped. That's what I hear, from the race.
And if that happens, will that be bad for the Giro, for cycling in Italy, or is it better that the Giro went ahead in any event, even if it ends in that way?
Well, I hope the Giro d'Italia will finish in Milano, because it's not only the Giro, it's not only cycling, it's the life. This is a symbol of the life which wants to go on. So we want to go to Milano. We want to go to the finish line. We want to live on, to survive, And so the general feeling is to go on. But if it happens, no worries. This is one of the worst years in the history. So we have to accept what it is.
Marco Pastanese, they're chatting to William Fotheringham. I guess just a quick roundup before we end this. Peter, first you, what do you think is going to happen with the Giro d'Italia over the next 2 weeks?
I think the next few days are going to be, it's a rest day tomorrow, but when they go back to racing, as always with the Giro, everything's at the back end, all the hard stages, that's where you're going to make up time.
Well, I think, we've got a couple of interesting stages this week. There's obviously a lot going on. We've got a rest day on Monday, but then the real action for me gets going with this stage based on a circuit of Cesenatico, which is Marco Pantani's hometown. Obviously, people will hopefully remember Marco Pantani as the kind of much beloved Italian icon who died really tragically in 2004. But was a winner of the Tour and of the Giro as well. So that's a stage that looks kind of not that much, but then it's got a repetitive series of hills, which are short and sharp. And I think that could be almost like a classic stage, a bit like a mini Liège, Bastogne Liège. And then we've got the time trial, the next time trial on Saturday. So we should have a really clear idea, I think, by Saturday of what the outcome will be. But the cloud hanging over this race, as it is over all races, is the virus. And I think as we get towards, as you said earlier, a week is a long time in the era of COVID-19. So we'll just have to see.
Who's winning it? In a word, in a name.
I've told you.
Go on.
Nibali.
I'm going to go with Nibali as well. I'd like it. I think it would be a great story. Peter?
I've got a feeling that Fuglsang's going to win it.
Okay. Well, let's leave it there. Thank you to Peter Cossins. Thank you to Jeremy Whittle as well. And thank you to you for listening. Thank you to the Peloton subscribers and the Aerogram listeners. Remember, you can always check out La Course en Tête, the website, all sorts of reviews, analysis and breakdowns as well. Check out the website, which is lacourseentete.com. I've been OJ Borg. We'll see you on the next one. Who knows where the world of cycling, or even the world in general, will be by then. Ciao.